Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I just can tell you a little bit about myself. Some of you might know me, but the majority probably not. I'm coming from Europe. Originally, I'm German, but I'm residing in Monaco. I started my career as a lawyer, but after a couple of years decided that is probably not the thing I wanted to do until the end of my life. And I switched into the industry, and I'm since about 15 years I'm an entrepreneur. I founded a mining company which is listed in the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, Deutsche Rohstoff AG, which became eventually very successful. And after many years, I could retire as their CEO. That was in 2014, and emigrate with my family to Monaco. And from then on, I have dedicated the rest of my life of making free private cities a reality. What is a free private city? I'm going to tell you in the next 20 minutes, and I'm also going to tell you how this could work in Puerto Rico and what is the benefit for Puerto Rico out of this idea. You might have heard about this guy. His name is Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And in school, at least where I have been to school, people tell you that this is the guy that basically formalized this social contract idea. And he says, well, what we are governed because we have subscribed to a social contract with our government, or amongst ourselves giving the government the right to rule over us. So far, so good, but the question arises, what with the people who did not agree to that contract, right? And this is never told, and I looked it up at Jean-Jacques Rousseau's famous book, Contrat Social, the social contract. And let me quote him. From where have 100 the right who want a ruler to vote for the 10 who don't? Even majority rule is subject to prior agreement and requires initial unanimous consent. Aha, and that makes sense. But they never tell you. Because it makes sense, because otherwise it's a contract at the expense of third parties. You know that you heard Joe McKinney talking at the beginning of this conference. You know what? Joe McKinney and I, we just signed a contract that you, Joe Kirk, have to pay us $1,000. You would say that's crazy. And indeed, in no civil law society, no civil law, common law system all over the world, this contract on the expense of third parties is valid for a reason, because the party who has to pay has not given their consent, right? That makes absolutely sense. But this is exactly the problem our societies face. There's a group of people who are basically setting up the rules, and you are bound to them despite you have not given your consents. And it's even worse. Even if you were initially agreeing to that concept of majority rule, of paying a certain amount of taxes, then unfortunately, the so-called social contract is ever changing. And here's a secret. There's only one side that can change it. It's not you. And this is something that is a problem. And that's why we've heard this from Joe, that people feel uncomfortable because they cannot decide on things that are so important for their daily lives. And what I want you to think about is not so much about there's politics, policy on the one side, and there's the market economy on the other side, and businesses, and it's a completely different spheres. No, this is not the case. This is also a market, and I call it a market of living together. And even if the electorate is voting for politicians who offer anti-market systems, and they eventually win, this is a market result. And if you look at our living together and all these politics from a completely different angle and say, well, this is a market, there's supply and demand. And then suddenly you recognize that all political argumentation is a little bit a waste of time. It's like you have a red wine here and a white wine there. And there's a person saying, I prefer red wine, and the other person says, I prefer white wine. So this person tries to convince the other person that his taste is better than his, right? And at the end, they agree on a political compromise, right? And nobody's happy, because these are incompatible solutions. Now, look at the market. You can buy either red wine or either white wine. And here are probably, presumably, a lot of people who believe in free markets. And why don't you just take this concept and put it on our living together? And now you say, okay, this is a concept. It's a classical liberal state. This is a minimal state, but you have a lot of freedom. And the other guys, they prefer a social welfare state where you have less freedom and you're paying a lot of your income, but you have social warmth and a lot of security. What's the problem? Even communism is not a problem as long as participation is voluntary, right? Those people have a different taste and they prefer a different product. Of course, some of those products might not work in the long run, and not even in the short run. But we will find out. Let the market find out. So if you have this in mind, then listen to the concept which is based on those ideas. Imagine a private company offers you the basic services of a state, which is protection of life, liberty, and property in a defined territory. And you pay a fixed amount for those services per year. Your respective rights and duties are laid down in a written citizen's contract between you and the provider. For everything else, you do what you want. Thus, you are suddenly a contracting party on equal footing with a secured legal position instead of subject to the government's or the majority's ever-changing will. And you only become part of it if you like the offer. So this is exactly the idea of free private cities. For the very first time in history, Jean-Jacques Rousseau's requirement of initial consent would be fulfilled. Because you get your contract, you see in the contract, okay, there's some rules, not many. Okay, that is okay for me, and it's an astonishingly low sum that you have to pay for security and infrastructure and some court systems. I agree, I'm okay, I give my signature, right? It's a service contract. It's not a big politics, philosophical approach. No, it's just, what do you want? You want from your state, you want security. You want to go out of your house and your children without being robbed or beaten to death. And if you have a conflict of interest, you need some neutral institution like an arbitration tribunal or court, independent court that is deciding on that, and which is then be enforceable. And therefore you were willing to pay something for that. That is not so special. You're doing this all day long with your other service contractors. So this idea is a framework. Within that framework, a lot of different orders can develop. It's a framework for spontaneous order, but it's also an operating system that is open to a wide range of ideas. Again, you can imagine a free private city which has a lot of rules. You're a smart city where everything is completely controlled in order to improve the environmental friendliness or whatever. So this concept is a framework, and you or different providers like me, we can fill it out for different target groups. And now, let me just get back. I think there's one thing. Oh no, here. Advantages for Puerto Rico. Why does this make sense? Well, first of all, there would be a legal certainty. Every resident has this agreement with the operator, and it defines clearly the rights and obligations. And the good thing is the operator cannot change. disagreement unilaterally, right? That is the big difference. And the other big difference, if you pay taxes and you're not satisfied with the services of the state, bad luck. You have absolutely no legal position to do anything against it. But in a free private city, there's a contract, and you say, okay, Titus, I paid for security, and they have broken into our apartment. I want damages from you. Yeah, right? You are right, you're right. You're entitled to do that because you paid for security I didn't deliver. And you can say, okay, I want damages. I want compensation for that. That is a real equal footing reciprocity situation. The other thing is, of course, that conflicts about the interpretation or the fulfillment of that contract would not be decided by myself, but we would go to outside independent arbitration. Like that is also known already from international trade. Another big advantage, especially in countries like Puerto Rico, is that you have guaranteed security because again, since you're paying for the protection of your life, liberty, and property, and only for that, you have a corresponding claim against the operator. So the first and foremost task of the police is therefore to provide for your security around the clock. And if you become a victim of a crime, you are entitled to compensation. The police, of course, has to follow predefined and known rules of engagement. Again, if they do wrong, you come to me or probably you come to me and say, they have violated the contract because in the contract it says the police can do this and that, but they did more than that. So I want to sue you on, and that this cannot happen again. That is also possible. Suddenly, it's not government and you're a subject, but it's you're a customer and I'm a service provider. It's a complete paradigm change. And of course, you have more freedom because apart from the security package and the respective payments that come with the contract, you can decide by yourself, especially for what goods and services you want to spend money and which charity and political cases you want to support. You have full freedom of action, limited only by the respective rights of others and the basic rule laid down in agreement with the operator. This includes normally free speech, full freedom of contract, freedom of association with your fellow residents. The interaction between the residents happens on a purely voluntary basis, not based on coercion. That is important because everybody knows, oh, the others also have this contract. So I cannot go to the government, which is me, and say, I want an extra rule, I want a subsidy, I want the others to pay my new swimming pool because everybody can participate. No, it's not working because I tell this person, I would tell this person, well, it's a good idea with the swimming pool, but I cannot force the other people to spend their money on your swimming pool. Go to them and try to convince them, right? There is no forum for all these lobbyists and political activists and people, crony capitalists that are looking for special advantages. Bad luck for them. There is no forum for them to approach because everybody has this secured legal position. And limitless innovation is possible because innovation is seen as a chance, not a risk. Provided you do not harm your neighbors or their property, anyone can introduce new products and services without permission or license and pay for them in any currency desired. So you decide on your own if you want to test or use those products or services. I think after a while, free private cities will offer a much higher quality of life to everyone. And the result for Puerto Rico would be that such a system would attract new investment, new jobs, and new technologies that are coming to Puerto Rico. Because it's a very stable, clear, transparent, non-corrupt system. And this is attracting normally the investment that so far has avoided countries like Puerto Rico for the reasons Joe McKinney had already mentioned. So why, you might ask, well, why has this to be private? Well, again, one of the most important issues is no political struggle. A political struggle is blocking a lot of developments, because even the other party might agree to that provision and to the business proposal or whatever project you're planning, but for political reasons they're opposing it because they can gain something out of this opposition. But if you have no political forum where parties or something can pop up, because it's not much. I'm a provider only for very few services. So I'm not the big dictator telling you what you have to do in life. I'm just providing a service for security and dispute resolution and maybe some infrastructure. That's it. So you are completely free. You have self-determination instead of political participation, which gives everybody much more freedom, and you are basically the one who's deciding about what you do in your life. And also, I mentioned it already, these things like, well, my uncle is a minister and therefore I got the license for this business, is not happening in my system because it's a private company that has the for-profit motive to increase the value of the overall city, which would be then, of course, a part of Puerto Rico. And we want to attract the businesses that are most qualified and that probably make the most wealth off of it, no matter if they are related to some big guys that are in the Puerto Rican government. Because if we start with things like that, this will relatively soon go down, right? Because we would exactly avoid these mistakes that are made, or not mistakes, developments that are happening there, because you have a personal relationship, you get into business. No, that's not, because then it's relatively clear that it will not be the best and the most profitable companies that create jobs for the Puerto Ricans, but it will be people who want something for their own sake in the very first degree. And that is systematically not possible. So because the right incentive of a private for-profit company is that the operator has skin in the game, is liable, he has a reputation to lose. If I start being a crony and have my buddies who get all the licenses for the companies, then it's not going to flourish. People will know about that. I'm not capable of setting up other free private cities, and the people in the free private city will leave again, especially people coming from the outside world. So I have skin in the game. I have to treat my customers well, otherwise they will leave. I cannot force them. And I'm not going to waste resources because it's, in a way, my own money. So these are a lot of things. And of course, it's transparency, right? You know why I'm in, right? I want to make money. I don't have to pretend that I want to save the world, or while at the same time having a hidden agenda. That's what we experience in politics, right? They all want to do it for the common good. They all want to save the world. Who is believing them? I think nobody in this room, and probably even in the whole city. Not many people are believing that. So this is much more honest, right? We say it's a win-win situation, right? You, Puerto Rico, you get jobs, investments, and development, and we make some money. And we can even be transparent, tell you how much money we make. We can even share profits, right? So a lot of people are a little bit reserved, say, oh, for profit, it's a little bit unethical. No, it's not. It's much more honest, and it's much more transparent. And interestingly, if there are polls where people are asked, what do you think about, who do you trust more? Companies like Amazon or eBay or your government? What do you think? What is the result? People trust eBay more than their government, right? And they're definitely doing it for profit. And of course, I mean, we are solution-oriented enterprise. The idea is to increase the value and to make the city flourishing. And so far, we would bring in experts from all over the world to help us solve some issues. So it's not, we have a political party and we have some of our buddies who have supported the election, so we have to engage them as a minister. They are completely incapable, but they have supported us. No, that's not happening here. We are really searching for the biggest expert in the world to help this, and some of them are here today, and to help this making happen. Now you might ask, it's an interesting idea, but what about reality? We are here to make it happen in the real world. Well, here's the thing. Of course, this needs the free private city. Every free private city needs to have a legal basis within the host nation. So a contract is necessary of the city provider with the Republic of Puerto Rico, and whereby Puerto Rico would keep full sovereignty, would be still basically responsible for foreign policy and defense, but the free private city would be granted internal autonomy. You can, that's why I put this picture here. This is Hong Kong. If you imagine the relationship Hong Kong-China, that is approximately what would be the idea between the host nation and the free private city. So Hong Kong is part, in the meantime, is part of China. It's part of China's sovereignty. And China is responsible for defense and foreign policy and all of those general sovereignty things. But Hong Kong has internal autonomy. They have an own government, they have own rules, they have even an own currency. And this is a model even that works even without a currency, that we can say, okay, why not, right? And like in Hong Kong, then Puerto Rico might grant on a contractual basis 50 years, right? You have 50 years stability of your legal system as a free private city guaranteed, and after that 50 years there will be a referendum. We will ask the people in the city, do you want to stay under this regime or come back to Puerto Rico or make your own direct democracy or whatever, right? That would be the offer. There's a clear offer on the table. And we can also do a profit sharing agreement with Puerto Rico. We can say you will gain new jobs. Puerto Rican companies will get a lot of offers out of the free private cities, but on top of that, we share our profit with the government of Puerto Rico, or we give some shares of the free private city to Puerto Rico, and the city eventually will IPO. The elder of you might still recall an IPO as an initial public offering. Today, everybody's only talking about ICOs, but that would be indeed an option. I mean, imagine a city like Singapore going public. That is a tremendous wealth is generated. And it could happen here as well as a potential option, and Puerto Rico could benefit from that as well. At the same time, Puerto Rico would probably ask for some guarantees for human rights and obligation they have internationally, for example, truck and weapon trading, human trafficking, and all that. That is for sure, right? So that will not be an anarcho-capitalist paradise, because we are living in the real world where countries like Puerto Rico have real obligations towards the international community. You can say, okay, we just do what we want, and then you relatively soon probably will be closed down. So we have to take care of that. We have to take care of these obligations, of these international obligations that Puerto Rico has out of the international agreements and treaties they have conducted, and we would implement that in the contract we have with Puerto Rico and say, okay, we promise that we will stick to those rules, and there will be maybe a commission meeting every 6 months and looking if this is all fine. So you see that it's not just an idea, that is probably something more, and it's not so much different from what we have in Hong Kong, a special administrative zone. You have special economic zones with own legal system, like the Dubai International Financial Center or the Abu Dhabi Global Market. So this is all just one step further. So it's not a completely radically new idea. It's just transforming what you already know from the special economic zones and the service provider business contract and putting it together. So if you're interested, check the website and subscribe to the newsletter. It's not coming very often, but if something is happening, a real free private city is emerging, you will hear from it very soon. Thank you very much.